I don't know, maybe even the classic devs are kind of scared. They
I
don't
think so
want it to be retail so much that they won't even make changes that could be healthy for the game. All right, welcome guys to Prepared episode 40. We're back and we are sponsored by Manscaped. So more on that later in the podcast. But welcome back, Zirene. We've got a special episode today. Top 5 mistakes that we think Blizzard made, along with a little bit of news, our standard news. There's been some stuff like hunters apparently exploiting their butts off again, as they seem to be doing. We got a wrap.
Our 20% coupon code for Manscaped is prepared. I'm
is.
sorry. That's too good.
It's good, right? So they asked me what I wanted for the coupon code. I was like, it's got to be prepared, right? Like, surely. Funny story about that, by the way, guys, because I got a message out of nowhere from them wanting to sponsor us. And at first I was thinking, we're not that big. Why are they coming to us for that? Usually they go to the bigger podcasts. Like they go on the podcast with like million subscriber plus channels and such. And then I realized, wait, our numbers are like double what some other podcasts might be because we're 100% men. We're like your demographic, like 18 to 35-year-old men. Like our demographic is perfect for them. They need to sponsor every WoW podcast.
Jesus, we have some women, right? Press 1 in the chat if you're a woman, and I'm sure Manscaped could work for women too, right?
I'm sure it could. See, they're missing a whole demographic here. I did hear from our 1 or 2 female viewers the other day, though, when we were hanging out with chat the other day, and I was saying, according to our analytics stats, we are 99.9% men. So the like 10 women we have that watch the podcast. One of them reached out and they're like, yeah, I am a female, apparently, is what they said. So
I am a female.
Yeah, I'm a female. Which is exactly what I would expect a female to say, right? And definitely not a guy pretending.
Yeah. I'm a female. Oh no.
But yeah, welcome guys. It's been a while. I haven't seen Zirene in must be a month, is it?
Something like that.
Yeah, because you missed the last one. With the old Chanimal.
With Chan, how'd that one go?
Oh, that went well, actually. That went well. It was an interesting one to see him talk about. To see him talk about WoW and such. Because I was actually curious to see how that would work if you were actually there with like 2 hosts and an interviewee at the same time. Because that's an interesting dynamic. I'm not sure how that actually works.
Usually it's like you just have a conversation. It's not usually like an interview thing. Always you have topics and stuff and you both discuss them or you all discuss them. But yeah, it is definitely a little harder. But
yeah, so I mean, how you been? It's been a month. What have you been up to? Anything new?
What am I up to? Not much I can talk about, but like I did another League of Legends event in the last month.
That's right. I saw that. For OTK, you were casting for OTK. Yeah. And that's what the work thing you were doing was, right? Because like,
yes.
Yeah, I saw that on the subreddits later. Like, oh yeah, Zirene just randomly popped up. It's fun to watch when you randomly pop up because the League of Legends subreddit is normally like, hey, look, it's Zirene.
Yep. So I was like a really big figure in the league scene, so people remember when I pop up, but it's one of those things where like I don't like to draw too much attention to myself, right?
Yeah,
just like to be kind of thing.
Just randomly appear.
But it's always fun that people still recognize me. Always a little fun.
From the do you ever get tired though of the question of like, hey, I didn't know you played WoW?
No, because that's what I play and I like talking about it. So they're like, yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't know you play WoW. I'm like, yeah, I play WoW all the time. You want to know about WoW?
Dude, that's like me every time. Like, my chat gets me talking about like the analytics and numbers of streamer monetization and such. Because that's all I do all day is like think about how does the YouTube monetization work? Like, what are the business models? Like, all this other stuff. And it's really, really boring to people that don't do that stuff. Like, really, really dry talk. But you got to talk about what you enjoy. But how has your ZA been going?
They've been going really well. Like I only ever failed like 1 bear out of like the 20 I've done so far. So that one was a very special one. So
like that you said, special one. Are you doing them on all your characters?
Yes.
Jesus, that is a lot of ZA actually. Are you doing multiple runs on all your characters every week, or are you just doing like one per character?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Wait, how many runs is that then? Because you got like 5 billion rating characters.
Prot Warrior Paladin. It's 6 characters.
Jeez. Wait, so are you just rating like every day twice as much then?
Sort of, but the ZAs, I put them all on like one day, or like they're very easy to like I play Prot Paladin, I literally go Prot Paladin looking for ZA, get instant invited, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody literally wants a Prot Pally for ZA.
So you don't have like guild runs. Your guild's doing that. That's what I was gonna talk about for ZA. Actually, yeah.
I mean, they assign them, but to me, ZA is like a really like convenient thing to do when you have nothing else to do in the game and you're on and you're just like, I kind of want to knock a ZA out because it's very fast. It's less than an hour for me. Like I just keep the pace up, just push people, etc. And it's like it's always over before an hour. It's really nice. So, except for that one. That one was really bad. I feel
like everyone's had one of those runs at least, where everyone was a little bit too chill, or you just had a run which was the leftovers of your like the guild has 3 runs, and there's like this 4th run that's a really scuffed run that's just like people's 5th alts.
They're alts, yeah.
Yeah.
The scuffed alts want to get geared, man. Like there's BIS pieces in there, and then there's like definitely not BIS pieces. So it's But yeah, I think a lot of the changes from this patch were very, very good though. Like I think like people ask me constantly, they're like, oh, I quit in P1. Should I come back now? And that was like SSCTK stuff, Black Temple. I was like, dude, in order to get attuned to Black Temple, it was a fuckload of shit to do. Yeah. So I was like, there's no reason to like push yourself that hard. It's like so much extra stuff. You got to find like a heroic group. I don't think you have to do heroics for that, do you? No, that was the Adal. That was like Tempest Keep. You had to do heroics. Now, then it was like you had to find like an Arcatraz or something. That one's a little easier. But still, it's just like this gigantic quest line where you got to find like an SSC, a TK, then you got to do like a Mount Hyjal, then you got to do a BT. It's just, it felt like a lot to get attuned to something. So I'm very glad that now attunements are gone and heroics only require honored. And now everybody's doing Kara again for badges, and everybody's doing ZA constantly. It's like now is probably the best time that will ever exist or has existed in TBC to come back to the game if you left it. But you might want to transfer to one of the bigger servers if you we're on a server then.
Yeah, if you want old service. Yeah.
My buddy logs into Alliance Fairlina. What the fuck is that? Where'd everybody go? That's probably one of the big things. So I think it's definitely the best time to come back though.
Yeah, there's so much catch-up gear in ZA even. There's just so much gear. Like even if you're a raiding rogue, there's a whole bunch of stuff if you haven't gotten your BIS. Like there's just so much stuff this phase that you just like, oh well, I'll just take like the second option, which is a couple DPS behind it is close enough.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like the ninja tabbies are really, really, really nice.
Yeah, the ninja tabbies. The cloak's actually not bad either, and yeah, there's the rings, and although we have like 5 billion ring options now, but another one that doesn't hurt. But yeah, so yeah, I mean that's just ZA. That's a little ZA talk. But guys, is it the sponsor time? Is it the sponsor time?
Is it sponsor time? I think it might be sponsor time.
Yeah, I think this might be sponsored time, guys. This prepared podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Try it today. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code PREPARED at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's 8 million shaven balls, guys. So, Zirene, you want
to... No, that's not always.
That's true.
Some people only have one. Okay.
I apologize, men with only one ball. Let's go 7 point something million balls. 7 point something. And Zirene's got it behind me.
7 million balls shaven.
Guys, the Performance Package 4.0 by Manscaped has arrived, and oh man, is it a game changer. So inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Revival toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. So first off, the Lawnmower 4.0. This trimmer is the future of grooming. Dare I say the greatest ball trimmer ever? The fourth generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and also has a 400K LED spotlight you need for a more precise shave. Now, because this trimmer is waterproof, you can say goodbye to the mess on the bathroom floor. Want to take your grooming game even further to the next level? The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and provides proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps reduce nicks, snags, and tugs on those delicate nose holes. Also important, guys. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner will change the way you approach your hygiene routine. Trust me when I say this, fellas, your balls will thank you. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts in their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxes and the Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxes to another level. So it's time to take care of yourself. So go to manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PREPARED. I think it's a really good product. And actually, when I was researching this, because before I take any sponsor, I kind of look into them and just see. I highly recommend ceramic blades. Okay, let's just say that I highly recommend ceramic blades. They're very good for not cutting yourself.
That's actually one of my biggest fears when I'm shaving my balls. Or
dude, it's actually hard, right? Because
especially with an electric razor, I use a metal one whenever I do it.
Yeah.
I was talking to my buddy about this, and he was saying he was like, before any major event in your life, shave your balls. And I was like, it is kind of true, because I've never shaved my balls and then thought afterwards, wow, I wish I didn't shave my balls. I've never had that thought before. Every time I've shaven my balls, serendipitously, it becomes relevant that I have shaven my balls. It's really strange. It's really, I don't know what it is where you put it out there to the universe that you're shaving your balls, but for some reason it ends up paying off. I don't know why. Maybe confidence, etc. Who knows? But before any major event, you should shave your balls. It's going to give you some clarity, and it might come in handy because you never know what's going to happen. And also, I've never had the thought, I wish I didn't shave my balls. I love that the code is prepared. I don't know why that gets me, dude. Oh God.
But yeah, we are being judged on performance, guys, by the way. So if you want to help support the podcast and make this a long-term sponsor, go buy some ball shaving performance packages and help us secure a long-term prepared sponsorship with shaving your balls. But what else has been going on in WoW besides ball sponsors? The Wrath survey. Did you see the Wrath surveys, Eric? So there was a Wrath of the Lich King survey sent out by Blizzard, which I think everyone already knew that this was coming. So the survey was, did you play World of Warcraft Wrath originally when it was released?
Yes.
Which, yeah. Well, I think a lot of us, I think almost everyone did, right? I don't know many people that quit in TBC and didn't play at least a little bit of Wrath. How interested are you in a classic version of World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King? I think this is just, if you're into classic, I don't know why you wouldn't be wanting them to try. That's kind of a given. But then they talk about faction balance, which is interesting. So I'm kind of confused by the question, actually, because they say, how would you describe the faction balance of the realms you primarily play on across both factions? And it's like, unless you're on one of the 2 servers that that has a balance, there's no such thing as balance on any of the other servers. Every other server is like 90% one faction at this point. So I assume it'd be poorly balanced for everyone not on Firemaw or Grobulus. But
is Grob the only other one?
I think it might be, yeah. Because I don't know why Grobulus has survived. Wait, let's have a look, actually. Let's have a look. Ironforge. So faction balance. Demographics.
Jesus Christ. Benediction has 30,000 Alliance players? Fuck, dude.
Oh, man. Wait. Whitemane is down to 16,000? I guess Felina has become the designated horde.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Poor Whitemane. Yeah, 30,000 in Benediction. But yeah, only Firemaw and Grobulus have like that 50-50 kind of split. Venoxus is not doing too bad. And this, whatever this Russian server is, actually. but there's a lot less players on those. So it's pretty much like GrubMob and FireMob are the two designated actually balanced servers, which I still don't know how or why that is. That they're the only ones that are balanced. Like I know FireMob has progress, which might pull more alliance guilds over. And Grobulus, I don't know if the RP element adds anything to it. That they have more RP people that might want to be alliance. No, Blizzard likes money, so there's no reason why they would ever not do Wrath. It just wouldn't make any financial sense to them. Although I will say, there is some people have asked me whether I think that they would release Wrath or rush it out to hit like third or fourth quarter returns or whatever it is, because it felt like with TBC they really were on the line with not having that ready in time. If anyone remembers the beta for TBC, how unready it was, and then they rushed. Oh, I don't know if the devs just didn't sleep or what, but they got it ready just in time. Zirene, did you hear about the hunt? You must have heard about the Hunter mouse macro drama.
People had mentioned it, but I don't know exactly what it is. So what is it?
Okay. The best way to explain it, I guess, is having a cast sequence macro that auto casts itself with built-in timing commands for auto weaving. So it's basically like having if you spam or use this button and the program to go with it, it will auto weave for you with like perfect weaving timings. Like kind of what we saw with the previous thing where people were using auto hotkey to do it. But then people realized that you don't actually have to use auto hotkey. You can do the same thing with just your Logitech or Razer mouse software to auto press. So for people that don't know, if you have a Logitech or Razer keyboard or mouse, you have the software that allows you to make like input macros. So you can record like how long you want it to press a button or how many times you want to press the button or like the timing windows and such. So people realized they could do that, and then they combined that with just basic like cast sequence type macros and realized like, oh, you can just have like a button in your mouse that you press it and it auto weaves for you, basically. And at the top end of the weaving, there were some hunters that were able to perform really well. So basically the problem with melee weaving is that it's really hard to do well and make it effective. It takes a lot of practice. It takes like a stationary tank and spank type fight to do it well. 99.9% of hunters cannot melee weave effectively. There's this like small percentage at the top that can do it. But when you use this mouse macro to one click do it, basically, it becomes consistent and like a good DPS increase that they can just do because it auto like moves in and out. So yeah, the whole drama was that like one of the creators, Entos, who's one of the best passing hunters in the world, basically shine some light on it. And there's this back and forth now in the hunter community, whether they think it's allowed, whether they think it's not allowed. The majority saying not allowed because just straight up, guys, it's not allowed because Blizzard has never liked automation or like the statement has always been one button, one input, or one press, one input. They've never liked multiple inputs and such, and it's gone back all the way to when people were queuing. So I don't know if people remember with the queues, back when people were getting kicked every 30 minutes from the game, people would start using their Logitech or Razer mouse software or keyboard software to jump every like 29 minutes to make sure you don't get kicked out of the game. And at that time, there was a lot of talk about whether that was allowed or not allowed. And basically, it's just like not allowed. Blizzard doesn't like it, even though it gets used in retail a lot. That sort of like auto hotkey software. But it's definitely not allowed. But at the same time, the entire drama is that they don't know if Blizzard will ever enforce it. So it might be one of those things where it's not allowed, but will Blizzard really care enough to enforce it and ban people doing it?
I don't know if I dislike it or not. I think that obviously it's something that puts people at a disadvantage who don't have that type of software, and it's something outside of the game that, you know, is harder to control. I don't think it's something that, you know, Warcraft logs can do anything about. It's much harder to detect something like that unless I guess it's like what you like perfectly distanced inputs, then you can kind of tell. But I feel like I feel like it's on Blizzard to do something about it if they want to do something about it. But technically, it is against the
TOS and such.
TOS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically, per their rules, it should be something that is like punishable. I think that for the good of players who play Hunter and don't have this type of software, etc., probably should ban or punish the other people. Ren says, didn't they say auto hotkey was kosher? Did they?
Well, in retail, it's normal because in retail, it's almost required for some rating stuff. Auto hotkey to be efficient in rating. In classic, they've said like that stuff isn't really allowed. After they took out the multi-boxing stance and all of that, yeah, they kind of said like no automated hotkey pressing software basically. It's going to be interesting to see if Blizzard actually addresses it, because this could be one of those things where I don't even know how many people it affects, right? Like, because most hunters don't even melee weave anyway or care about melee weaving, because, like, honestly, hunters, if you just want, like, decent, good-ish DPS, you don't even have to worry about this, right? You can stand there and just continue one button macroing like, and such.
If you're a fucking gamer, then you want to try to learn to auto weave. There's a dude in my guild named Neebs. He plays 4 hunters and he auto weaves on all of them, so he gets a lot of practice. So it's one of those things that you need a lot of practice doing to get it right. And like you said, stationary targets, so you need to map out the ones that you really want to do it on. So
yeah, so it's like it's very niche for doing.
It seems fun. Yeah, it seems fun. If I played Hunter, I would do it, or I would try to.
Yeah, 100%. I probably wouldn't do it if I was a hunter, just not the macro anyway. I wouldn't use the macro because, like, you never know when Blizzard's just going to turn around and be like, okay, well, we've decided to start enforcing this. Bans on all of you. Like, you never know when that's going to happen. And it's really not worth losing your character for like 2 months or whatever they would choose to do it on if you got randomly banned because you were using a mouse macro for like 2 fights or whatever it is. Because it's such a niche kind of thing for most hunters. But yeah, so that's Hunter Macrogate. I still do find it funny that all the hunters gaslit everyone to saying that melee weaving would be huge. And it's only now in like phase 4 where you guys are suddenly all melee weaving for the most part. And up until now, very few, if any, hunters were melee weaving. Like there was just like these guys at a very, very top minor percent. And no one else was melee weaving. Like literally no one else was melee weaving. Because I remember Zirene was the target of some hate because we were not accounting for hunter melee weaving in one of the podcasts at one point, and the hunters got mad.
Well, nobody was doing it.
Yeah, no one was doing it, and no one still was doing it until like phase 4, basically. Like,
people didn't start doing it until like very recently.
Yeah. So yeah, that's hunters. But we do have our main topic of the podcast today, guys. So
what is it?
Top 5 Blizzard mistakes that we think from the start of Classic until TBC, what they've done wrong, basically. Like 5 things they've done wrong. I'm curious to see which ways Irene went about this, because we purposely didn't talk to each other about our lists or how we were going about it. So depending on how you interpret the question, the list could be a little bit different as well, based on that. I took the stance that I basically went at it as things that Blizzard maybe did at some point or should have done to remedy the situation of a lot of people trying Classic and then quitting. But there's a lot of ways you can go about it. How did you go about your top 5 list?
I basically just went with the things that I had the most issue with personally. I went from personal experience here.
Okay, I'm looking forward to see what drums appears on your list.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so the way we're going to do this is I think we start at 5 for both of us, right? And then we'll work our way up the list. We'll work our way up the list, seeing what the other person had for their top 5. I guess I'll go first then. So my number 5, I didn't know how to classify this, but it's not really one thing, but it's like the entire season 1 and season 2 TBC PvP changes that were like too late. And like the whole starting teams at 0 rating was just a bad idea because they didn't like do other changes to go along with it. Like the entire season 1 and season 2 of TBC PvP, I think they just like killed the desire to PvP in so many people. And so much of TBC is based around the fact that like when you're not raiding, you're like participating in this PvP thing. But we've got
PvP doesn't exist really anymore.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. PvP for most people it doesn't exist. There's like a small niche community of PvPers that still PvP. But outside of that, the general guys, they at most they do 10 games a week on like the fives or twos team just to get something.
Mm-hmm.
But they only do it just to get like a little bit of gear that they might use in PvE for the most part. Like a lot of these people don't PvP. It's become a non-factor in the game for a large majority of people. And I think by having that entire fiasco happen in season 1 and season 2, it made PvP too hard to access. The team system sucked and was too restrictive. Like the entire way they went about it. And they honestly they said they realized that pretty quickly. But I mean the team system's still here and it still sucks and is too restrictive in a lot of ways. The honor was too unfun to farm. Like honor is just it doesn't work in the modern era the way it's implemented. And the gear costs were too much for the average player. The retail system without the boost in points meant that everyone on average was earning less points every week as well. And like they tried to fix it, right? They brought in the changes in late season 2, I think is when it started. And then season 3, and then they got the tokens in earlier now. And they're doing all this stuff now, but it's almost like it's just too late. You lost all the people that might have tried to do PvP. So yeah, I just put like my number 5 biggest mistake is how they just treated PvP for that whole season 1, season 2, and then just didn't act quickly enough to save it. So yeah, that's my rant about the PvP system. What was your number 5, Zirene?
My number 5 is Chronoboons being way too late. I went back to Classic with this one, where a lot of the reason that people didn't like playing Classic was world buffs, and instead of removing world buffs or doing something about them, they let it sit until they finally found a solution, which was near the end of the game. That I think was a big issue for me. Because like, if you still want people to go around, even not changing like Chronoboons to being hey, this is something that gives you the world buffs and it has a cooldown on it, etc. Just releasing it way too late, and it was more of this thing where when we got it, we finally just went, instead of being like, oh, this is great, we went, why wasn't this in the game before? Like, why wasn't this something that like they had thrown in like BWL or like as early as possible when it looked like world buffs were becoming the problem for a lot of people's enjoyment of the game, whether it was losing them, whether it was having to get them, and then everybody basically requiring them for rating became a big turnoff for people. So I also think that like griefing people, some people had a lot of fun with that, but I think simultaneously Chronoboons fix the problem of the game encourages you not to play it by having world buffs, right?
Yeah.
World buffs difficult to obtain. They tick while you're online. Chronoboon solved that problem, but it basically made me sit there and go, there's no way I'm ever going to do any dungeons like a day or two before I'm going to raid, maybe even 3, because I'm just going to get my world buffs and then I'm going to raid log. So raid logging was just a very unfun thing for the entirety of the existence of Classic, but world buffs are very fun. And I think Chronoboon was a good idea, and I think it was implemented well, but I think it was just way too late, and they should have been messing around with something like that much earlier. I understand that that it may have been an unexpected issue for them with world buffs, but if they had anybody on the team who had been on private servers or anything like that, then they would have seen this coming, and then they would have had at least some idea of what they should do. Like private servers, some of them are even worse, right? There was like a thing where Dark Moon Fair rolled 1 to 10 on your buff, a 1 to 10% damage increase. And if you got one that wasn't 10%, you had to log out, wait until your Dark Moon Fair was ready again, and then do it again and try to get the buff. I think that Chronoboons are just way too late. That's my number 5, is that Chronoboons were way too late.
I'm actually surprised that that's your number 5, because I have that on my list as well as the whole world buff / consume issue, but I have mine higher. I have it higher, okay. Like much higher.
All right, we'll snake draft this instead of go back and forth. So I'll do my number 4.
Okay. Yeah.
My number 4 is very similar to your number 5, and it's the lack of PvP adjustments and not abolishing arena teams. So basically everything that you've said, I think I echo here, but as my number 4, because this, I think my number 5 is a little bit of like, it's in the past from where we are now, and this one is a little bit less in the past in comparison. Uh, so arena teams are just something that, I play on some really high rated arena teams, but then people want to leave or play with other people, or you can't get your games in for the week because somebody's doing something, right? And maybe you have to find another person, then you play 10 games and you guys get no rating for it because the team you're like, your rating where you're just trying to get his personal rating up. I just don't like it in general. The retail system is better. Arena teams don't have that sense of camaraderie that they did back in the day. People jump and do boosts and all these other things now. So you want people to be as untied down to other individuals as possible in the game. When it comes to PvPing, when it comes to PvEing and guilding and like raids and stuff like that, they already have that situation where you have to get people on at a certain time, etc. People plan more around raiding than they do PvPing, and PvPing should be the thing that fills the time in between, right? You shouldn't have to like schedule PvP time with 5 other people or 4 other people every week. I know, but it's the reality of it, and this is why fives doesn't exist in retail. But I think that the issues with the cost of honor and things like that, obviously, same thing. Tier tokens not turning into I even think when season 2 happened, like I was really surprised that season 1 gear just was not immediately available for for tokens. That was the crazy thing to me, because I was like, this is going to keep people doing Kara. This is going to keep people interested. So yeah, I think number 4, PvP changes and not abolishing arena teams, just a little too slow for me. And the arena team thing is just the icing on the cake for me.
Like I got all the stuff you said with the World Buffs Consume thing, but like I actually I had it as my number 1 for World Buffs and Consume, but
Really?
that's because I think they lost so many players due to the World Buffs Consume issue in Classic that they just didn't come back for TBC, or like they were just so done with that issue.
It was time consuming, yeah.
It was too time consuming, because like for people that don't remember, or I don't know how many of you guys in the chat came just for TBC, but man, it was a full-time job to get world buffed every week. And if you were on Alliance, it was even worse, because you could get grief. You needed like summon networks in some places. if your guild was one of the guilds, which was like the majority of guilds, that was on the borderline of like the amount of time you had on the world buff versus like how fast you clear, you had to try to like min-max that to get as much of the world buff time in your raid as possible, which meant like you also needed to use the summon network to do it. So you literally paying people to summon you. The consumes, I think I actually lumped in consumes with your with the Chronoboon stuff, because I feel like consumes cost too much. It just like it compounded into this thing where raiding required way too much just time. It felt like a full-time job to prepare for the raid, because the consumes cost too much. It like just added on to the fact that you were doing world buffs, and now you also have to make sure you have like the 5 billion consumes that you needed every single week in order to be effective. I think like I just got so many. I remember like a lot of good players quitting that were really diehard WoW guys, because at some point they were like, oh guys, I can't do this world buff and consume thing every week. It's like the problem that people don't get, and sometimes people are like, oh, it wasn't that bad if you were efficient with getting world buffs, and it wasn't if you had like a whole network set up to do the world buffs efficiently. Like for example, if you were in progress, for our like raid 3, we would have like all the heads dropped at the right time, like all scheduled, everything like that. It wouldn't take that long if you had it all scheduled in, but it's just the fact that you had to block out entire like timing windows. Like you couldn't go about your day because you'd be like, oh, I gotta be back at like online at 4 p.m. for the rent drop at this time. And it just it's like one of those things where makes the game feel like a chore. And I think that's where WoW started going downhill, is when there's too many things that feel like chores, and that's when people quit MMOs. From what I've seen, is that people quit MMOs when too many things in the game feels like a chore, and at some point it clicks in their head and they think, man, why am I doing this? I could be playing something else instead of doing my daily chores or whatever it is. So yeah, that's why I had it number 1 at least. But So my number 4 then was actually server balancing and queues. So I had the fact that transfers were not easily or quickly made available. There was no attempt to do anything to balance factions and such. Until recently, they started doing the whole transfer stuff. But for the longest time, they told the problem is that they have a very bad history, right? Like if anyone played Classic, they know at the start the queues were horrible on all the bigger servers. They basically came out and said told everyone you should roll on other servers due to these 10-hour queues. Right? They literally they were the customer people were on the forum saying, no, you guys need to roll on these other servers. Like, don't worry, it'll be all fine. And then they very quickly abandoned those other servers as they died, which just reinforced the belief of all the people that were saying, no, we shouldn't roll on these other servers because they're going to die. And that just proved all those people were right. They did die, and then they didn't have the transfers. And until they came, your only other option was, well, I guess I just start again. I make a new character, and that's all I have. You just lost a lot of people to that. There are a lot of people that, even the casual players that make the game feel alive, you lost a lot of them just to those shenanigans because they didn't want to play on the servers with a lot of queues, but then you sent them to the servers without queues, and then you abandoned them when the server dies, and they just quit. So a lot of the priority and why I rank this in my top 5 is because a lot of the things that I think they should fix are things that make people keep playing the game. And for me, like the fact that you just abandoned an entire group of people because of the server balancing issues and the queues, I think had a big impact on the mid-level of people, that like the non-hardcores that actually want to play the game.
Yeah, I think this is where our lists are going to start to get away from each other, because your list is built around what makes people quit, and my list is built around shit that I don't like.
Okay.
So like number 5, obviously for me was like Chronoboons, and like, you know, that stuff being too late in world buffs. But that probably made more people quit than, you know, the number 2 thing or number 3 thing or number 1 thing on my list. Yeah. So yeah, my list is built a little diff at this point. My number 3 is not removing batching until Nax, the end of Nax.
Oh, that I didn't even think about batching.
I hated batching so much. Like, and the worst part was when you went on PTR, the batching didn't exist. So like you're doing like this at one point, like people were doing more damage on PTR because their executes weren't batching, and you were just like, okay, this is a really good like people's PTR runs for Nax were not like lining up with the runs you had on live a lot of the times. It was just really different. People were doing more damage. You didn't have shit batch. It was easier to save people. There was just a lot less bullshit in the game. And that's just for, you know, the comparison of we had speed runs that we would do on PTR versus on live with batching and without batching. So that doesn't even come close to like PvP, where I like 2 rogues blind each other at the same time, and you're just like, how did that even happen? Like that,
the double sap.
That didn't like ruin the game or make people quit the game, right? But for me, it's number 3 and it's above the other 2 because I just feel like you could have had an entire game from the beginning of Classic to the end of Classic without batching, and I feel like Blizzard was way too stuck on the idea of having their game have an authentic experience where they literally just added artificial latency to make it play like you have shit internet and computer again. Like, I'm like, I don't like it. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the other things on my list has to also do with this as a like overall topic. Yeah. Just my biggest issue with the whole thing is going to tie into all of this, right? It's all going to come back to my number 1 eventually.
Okay. I see where you're going. Yeah, so I actually agree with the batching thing is, it really shows the approach to the game and in a lot of ways why a lot of players don't like that approach to the game, in that they at one point in time, I'm sure all of us remember the no changes era, where they basically wanted to present the OG WoW Classic experience before very, very quickly realizing, or at least the community realizing, that A lot of people do not want the complete OG WoW experience. They want to like WoW Classic for a little bit, and then they want the WoW Classic Plus very quickly after they've gotten the nostalgia fix. In a lot of ways, I think that's what a lot of players very quickly realize, that the original implementation of WoW Classic doesn't really match with what a lot of people want to play long term. So a lot of people want to just hop on for like a really short time and then get that nostalgia kick, and then they'll probably be gone after a while. There's not a lot of people that want to grind through a lot of the issues with OG Classic WoW for the long term. And I think that's where you lose a lot of the modern gaming crowd, and that's why it's really hard to keep them around. But yeah, so that was that your number 3?
That was my number 3.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I actually didn't even think about batching, but yeah, it has such a change in the feel of the game. My number 3 was Phase 1 of TBC. I didn't know how to like
That's actually a good one. That's actually really good.
I didn't know how to put this in, but yeah, Phase 1 of TBC was a mistake. So like there's so many reasons. That's why I just put like Phase 1, because like one, I feel like the community saw Phase 1 of TBC as a chance for Blizzard to do better Classic, right? They were coming in really hyped because Chronoboons came in, and everyone was thinking, oh man, wait, Blizzard's making good changes. These are like really good things. Maybe they're gonna take that, what they did at the end of Classic, and bring it into TBC. And we're gonna see Blizzard being active and proactive with making changes that are really good. And then you came in and like, firstly, it felt rushed. Well, it felt like a very rushed thing. And then Phase 1 went on for way too long, and a lot of the guilds and the hype just straight up died, because you had Karzhan, you had Grow, and you had Megtherodon, and like none of those felt very competitive. Karzhan just feels like you're doing instances every week, like just a group run. Grow and Mag just way too short to actually feel like a raiding experience, really. You just kind of get together once a week for a really, really quick thing. And then they did the drum changes, like where I think that's when people were like, oh, Chronoboon hype, and then drum changes. They're like, wait, we thought you changed, Blizzard. We thought you changed. We thought you understood how things worked, and then you did the drum changes, and everyone's like, oh, maybe not. And then they never reverted the drum changes. So they just
Why did they make one change and not the other?
Yeah, it's like, why would you do that?
Why did they do both? Why would you do both changes?
And until now, we've just been playing with the crummy drums. When we could have had just like had good drums the entire time. We could have just had like good drums the entire time. And I think Phase 1 just showed that they had no roadmap, or they just refused to give us a long-term roadmap, or like there's just a lack of good improvements, future thinking, and I think that's where the cracks of WoW Classic really started to show, because I think a lot of people came into TBC expecting a lot more, like expecting like, okay, like we had Classic, the whole no changes era thing, and now like TBC is going to be where Blizzard turns it on and like maybe starts making changes, and it just never happened. We just got Phase 1 TBC that saw a really fast increase in people playing, because Phase 1 of TBC wildly popular. Even if you look at the population levels versus Classic, very, very popular. But then you also saw like a lot of people quitting as well in TBC. A lot of people came and a lot of people quit. So yeah, that's why it's my number 3. Is just the whole Phase 1 of TBC.
I actually agree with that. All of that seems like just Grohl, Mag, Kara. The rating experience was like not very good. You only like, that was the whole idea, is you're setting up you're supposed to be setting the stage for 25 mans for the rest of the entirety of the expansion as your main rating content. But it was more like you had Karazhan breakout groups, that's 2 10-mans, and then you had like 1 5-man group where people had to play alts or they had to pug it, and then you'd bring all those people together to do your 25 mans. So it didn't feel like 25 mans breaking out into 10 mans. It felt like your 10-man groups getting together for your 25 mans. Yeah. And the other thing I didn't like too is basically everything in 10 mans requires 2 tanks. And you don't need 4 tanks for your 25 mans or 6 tanks. So you run into a big problem where you end up with people who have to actually get gear for both both 10 mans and 25 mans and respec all the time too. It just felt really, it just felt like it was a weird place to be. Instead of having like more 25 man content and then going from there, right? Those tanks had to re-roll if they ever wanted to get into 25. Yeah.
I mean, and it
Lack
just
of
caused
tanks
issues
and-
going into like phase 2 and such as well, and phase
Mhm.
3 and so on. Is that it just made everything so scuffed going in. They just didn't set it up well to succeed. It was like sabotaging it from the start. All right. So what was your number 2 then? I'm curious. What was your number 2?
This is probably the most controversial one on my list. And like I said, I made my list in terms of pain points for me personally, not so much the entire player base. Number 2 for me, and I know a lot of like good things did come out of this. I know a lot of really good and fun and all those types of things and came out of this. But simultaneously, I didn't like it. And it's leaving the PTR up after BWL release and every subsequent patch afterwards until recently. I think that having PTR up changed what it meant to be a top-end raider, and it added on to the workload that you had to do to be an elite level player. Having to do the instance multiple times back to back to back to back to back in a single day to even get the practice in. Now, like I said, good things did come out of having PTR up. It really changed the Nax speedrunning meta. It leveled up everything. We got sub-hour runs like very quickly because of it. But I still think that what it did is it put an enormous amount of strain on people's lives who wanted to be top-level players. And these are 40 mans, right? So I think that leaving the PTR up after the release of BWL was a massive fucking mistake, because I think it burnt out a lot of their top player base. And I think a lot of that came down to the extra time they had to spend on the game constantly. And then not to like, add on to it, but world buffs ticking when you're like copying characters and all this other shit that went into it was just really bad. Sam Squanch? Squanch, Mr. Squanch. He's squanching over there. So I get your point, but looking back, all those cool ass speedrun strats wouldn't have been done without PTR. Polarity, but trio, seal, team, 6. Yeah. But that's the thing is I understand that. But I think that personally, PTR was a really like big weight on people to have to keep doing that shit, right? It was a very big thing that made a lot of guilds fall apart. You would have had more people trying speed runs if PTR didn't exist, even if the strats wouldn't have been as cool, right? So that's what I think is that, yes, it wouldnn't have been as cool speedrun wise for like the ending strats because people got to practice more shit, but it also made it so that like doing the speed run itself was like you'd done this like 50 times already that week, right? And I just think that the PTR added to the player fatigue at the highest level. So
I actually agree that with the player fatigue, because that was the time when I was in raid 3 in progress, and man, watching the burnout of it, or rather like I think that was delayed burnout actually from this, in that a lot of people assumed the top players were doing more PTR or more private like practice than they were until the PTR was left up, and then a lot of guilds were actually doing a lot of PTR time. But before that happened, a lot of guilds that like a lot of people just assumed that progress is really good because they play on their own private server all the time and practice all the strats and such. But it's not actually true. A lot of the progress players were not doing that much of that stuff until there was that period where they left that PTR, and everyone, like every guild that wanted to compete in the top echelon basically was forced to do crazy amounts of PTR. And I remember even Fienzi saying, who's the rogue class lead at the time in progress, he was saying, man, this is not healthy. Like the amount of PTR that a lot of guilds are being forced to do in this like 1 or 2 week period at times was not healthy to have them do it. And I think it shows in that as soon as TBC came around, so many of progress in particular, I saw just decide, now I'm casual now. I'm in the casual raid. Move me into raid 3 because that was too much. And then they just like burnt out. They just completely burnt out from wanting to be in that hardcore experience. They just wanted to chill.
Yeah, I think another layer too, like this is not just a speedrunning thing where it's like leaving PTR up after BWL release. It's also, it extends a bit into TBC for me because the way that they like released instances, everybody went on PTR for like a month and did Karazhan. Everybody went on PTR and did like Vaj and KT. I know, like, here's the thing, right? Is I'm not so naive as to believe that the runs and races to world first and stuff like that would have actually been better without PTR. They would have been worse for sure. And I also think that it would have put other types of groups of guilds in a better position if there was no PTR, because they would have a private server where they would practice anyway. Basically, like, I'm not as naive as to believe like it completely spoiled that, but I do think that it did take the surprise out for almost everybody, right? Once it got to that point where everybody's able to just hop on and do it. So I just have an issue with PTR in general because, like, I can't think of a game that I've been able to jump on the PTR and play like a patch ahead consistently in an MMORPG, and it's been an enjoyable experience ever. I did it as a game tester for like League of Legends, but like it feels like Blizzard is relying very, very heavily on the community to do stuff on PTR to give them bug reports and feedback. And then a lot of that didn't even get implemented until like, until later. So yeah. I know it's very high on my list. And like I said, my list is that number 3 was where it was going to start to deviate from yours because I have personal beef with a lot of these things more so than like the mass population or people who play the game. So
yeah, well, I mean, a big part of MMOs is that magical experience of that, like almost that first time doing that thing. And the big thing with Classic is that it's been so long for a lot of people that it's almost like re-getting that first time experience again. And a lot of people didn't do a lot of the raids fully the first time around, and they didn't have access to that at that time, especially with like the end of Classic raids going into TBC as well, because a lot of people didn't do those raids at all. And it does feel like when they get to do that PTR thing these days, with how fast everything spreads with YouTube and guides and such, like even as myself a guide creator, I would prefer it if they like people go into it without the guides and then the guides appear after, because as soon as everyone's had their runs and like everything's figured out, it's just not as fun. You kind of lose a little bit of that magic, I think, which is like a big part of the MMO experience for a lot of people, I think. Yeah,
I agree. Wiping on content to get through it is honestly a good thing. Yeah, I know it sounds bad to say that, but it is a good thing to wipe on content to then have it be rewarding when you beat it. So
yeah. So my number
it's
2,
it's the Elden Ring effect.
Oh god, great content though. Elden Ring, watching people wipe, people wipe in Elden Ring.
True.
But my number 2 is GDKPs actually. Ooh. This is my number 2, so it might be a little controversial depending on.
Yeah, this is where your list is a little different.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So GDKPs. I think GDKPs or rather the fact that Blizzard never addressed them and just let it run until now is a major problem. Wow. I think the GDKPs, they promoted an unhealthy way to play the game or to sustain the game, because it feeds off gold buyers to sustain basically the rest of the community. It's become standard to this point now where everyone that raids hardcore basically, or everyone that's serious about the game, has another character that goes and does GDKPs, because that it's just like the comfy way to farm. Because if you're out there farming gold just manually, it is nowhere near as efficient as just like a solid GDKP, or nowhere near as chill as just going to a GDKP. And you don't even have to buy gold to go to a GDKP once you're in there, because once you're in there, you get gold from the GDKP. From whoever the big gold buyers are, they sustain everyone else by giving them the gold every week as splits of the gold happen. So, while the entire system of GDKP in itself isn't that bad, I think the fact that it feeds off the gold buyers I think is a major issue because for people that don't know, the history of GDKPs is that they originated from Korea and Asian servers in particular, in that it's actually like a very normal thing that where like, oh yeah, like the Korean guild, yeah, they run off GDKP. That's totally normal. You just buy all your gear based on gold. And that's like a completely standard system. But they didn't get implemented into the Western kind of things for a long time, or a lot of Western games didn't allow that sort of thing to happen. And I think the problem with them is that you cannot stop GDKPs at this point in time now. Like it's a thing that you have to address when it starts, and you have to stamp it out if you want to stop it. Because once everyone's relying on GDKPs and the entire game system runs on GDKPs, and so many people's tunes and only raids are based on GDKPs now. Like I know a lot of rogues that only raid in GDKPs now, and a lot of people that only raid in GDKPs. Like you can't take that out now because suddenly you're just going to like make a lot of people homeless, basically, if you did that. Like I think you literally can't do that now. So I think the entire GDKP system is like, I understand that it's a very necessary evil at this point for a lot of players, but I think that they needed to stamp it out at the start to promote a healthier environment for now. So that's why I'm against the entire GDKP system. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that one, Zirene? I'm curious because you're a big GDKP.
I thought GDKPs would have a worse effect on the economy, but they haven't. Like, I don't see like consumes becoming more expensive over time or anything like that on my servers. In fact, it feels like if you really want to make money, you by like farming consumes and selling them, it's still a good way to actually make money now. So I don't feel like it's done anything to, and I don't think it hurts like the average raider in terms of prices either. I think the only things that I think end up being like expensive are things that I think are like goblin sapper charges are way too fucking expensive for, you know, the materials on them. It's because nobody wants to go farm classic shit. So I'm just not sure. The gold sinks are very small, so GDKP for me is like how I feel my characters. But like here's the other thing too, is like, do you, I know it's not the same thing, Snow.
Yeah.
But like, how do you feel about like Chan selling boosts?
Okay. Yeah. I think I actually agree with Chan in that he doesn't think he should be able to do that, but he also doesn't know how they would stop it. So it's like it's just too hard to stop. So there's nothing they can do about it in that fashion. So like for at least for me, a lot of the my problem with GDKPs isn't so much the concept of the GDKP, because I think at the concept of it, it's not that bad to exist. It's more that I think it makes the game rely on it in a lot of ways, and then they don't do changes that I think would be healthy for the game. Although God knows if they do the changes anyway, but I think then it becomes this thing where like a lot of people don't only play the game for the GDKP and they don't play the rest of the game. Like the rest of WoW doesn't get improved because so many people are relying on GDKPs as like a function of the game. Mm-hmm. I think it starts the entire game starts centering around balancing around like GDKP stuff instead of like actually addressing serious issues of like, why do these people do the GDKPs instead of like go do other activities in WoW? Like, why aren't you providing them other things to do? There's just like all these other things that players probably should be doing for the health of the game that aren't GDKPs that no one's doing, or that Blizzard isn't providing because GDKPs are like what everyone does. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the whole GDKP stuff. But up to number one though, what is this big number one that you're leading up to, Zirene? What do you got for your number one?
This is like a very big umbrella and not very specific, but it's my biggest issue, and I think the biggest mistake that Blizzard has made is they have been too averse to changing things in a 15 fucking year old game. They have tried to preserve the classic experience and tried to have an authentic experience while it is anything but that at its core. This is a 15-year-old game being played in a modern time by current people. They're going to play it completely differently. It's not going to feel the same. We felt that immediately when people were doing mage boosting to level in original Classic, right? We felt that immediately, where people were like 5-man mage Scarlet Monastery.
Yeah.
Like, it was fundamentally a different game, not because the game was different, but because it was played by different people who have way more knowledge nowadays. So I think they have been way too averse to changing things. But the same thing, at the same time, they do change things and then try to say that they aren't, right? They try to be like, we're trying to preserve the experience of the authentic, like, classic experience. But it's like, why do arena teams start at 0, right? They start at 1500 back then. Why do you have like the drum changes? Why do you have like all these different things that happen, right? And you're saying like you aren't going to make changes to things that, in my opinion, are like more important or have a bigger impact on the game. And I honestly think that the word classic to me does not mean that you should be making an authentic experience of how it was back then. In my opinion, I don't want to play the game that was 15 years old. I don't want to play TBC over again. I want to play a new version of the game that happens to take place in TBC for a modern audience. I think it should be balanced around us. I think they should play more to Warcraft logs being a thing nowadays. Like, I feel like Blizzard needs to start like paying attention to their audience because they're the reason the game has changed, right? So yeah. Like, I agree with Mega Man X 9999. 9999. Yeah, I did 4. He says, I want to play the best version of TBC, not the most authentic. That's my feelings as well. I don't really care about the authentic experience because I just want to play a good game. I don't want to play your fucking 15-year-old game that has bad game design in it, really like fucking bad grinds and stuff that you realized later are bad and change them. I want a good version of this game because this is what it could have been. I want TBC if it were made now, right? That's what I want. So that's my biggest issue with Classic overall, is I do feel like a lot of the times I am like, once again like playing this game I played 15 years ago, but it's not that game. We've twisted the game and the game hasn't adapted to us. That's how I feel, right? We've changed the game, but the game hasn't changed for us. And that's what I think they should do, is they should have changed or augmented the game to be better for this audience. I understand that like SOM is their attempt at that, but I think it's a really bad attempt. I think it's failed because, they took out one of the big things like world buffs that people actually enjoyed about the game because they said, fuck it, no world buffs. How is this going to be appealing to people? When I don't think that was the problem. I think the problem was just Chronoboons, accessibility, all that shit. So people even said like, just make them not purgeable, right? Like, yeah, I definitely feel like that's my biggest one for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's your number one, because
it's my number one because it's my biggest beef.
I actually had something similar as my number one to what you just covered, but I wasn't sure if that was like, is that a thing that Blizzard changed, or is it's like it's more of like an overarching problem with the entire
it's a mistake.
WoW. Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake that Blizzard made in the handling of Classic is they have been too averse to changing things in a 15-year-old game around a modern audience. That's what I think.
Yeah. I actually agree, because like in my runner-ups list, I had of like, because I couldn't like limit it to 5 at first, so I was figuring out like, what do I cut from my list here, and I actually had like Season of Mastery as one of the big mistakes, because to me it just represents that they didn't understand what they needed to do to succeed. And I think a lot of that is because they keep coming at WoW with the angle of how do we like preserve the Classic experience, or they try to cater to the people that are very nostalgic about the way Classic should run. A lot of times they feel like, oh, Classic has to be Classic, and for it to be Classic it has to like tick certain boxes. But a lot of the times the boxes that they're trying to tick have a very small vocal audience that like wants it this way, and a very large vocal audience of people who also want it that way but will not play the game that way. like it's almost like people don't want their version, their Classic experience to be tainted, even if it means that they will play for a short time and then quit, because like they cannot play this game in a modern era. They don't want to play it.
The game by design is already tainted. Because it's not that time. It's played on better computers. It's played on better internet. It's played with more access to the internet. People aren't going to fucking Game Facts and looking at ASCII art of somebody like putting a poster up that says "Wow Guide for BWL." Like it's nobody's going to fucking Alakazam or any of those fucking websites. Like it's a modern era. It's completely different. This exchanging of knowledge, YouTube, all this shit that people can just watch and see how other people do stuff innately just makes it different. Yeah. It's going to be a different experience. You cannot recreate that experience exactly, and it should not be attempted to like. Because here's the way I feel about creating experiences. When people want to give you an authentic experience like that, you have to go 100% or it's zero. It either is or it isn't. Either it is completely authentic and it's exactly the way it was, or it's not, and it shouldn't continue to try and be. Because once it stopped being authentic or something about it isn't the same, then just don't fucking try to make it that way. Just make it make it good. Make it good for now. Because all the problems, the design flaws, etc., that existed in Classic, the grinds, all those things, some people might like them, right? But then it even came down to like, how much does it take experience-wise to level, right? Like, how are they stopping mage boosting? And then they're like, well, you know what? Fuck it. I guess we really can't. Because these things did exist. People just didn't do them. God,
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, a big thing, and I see chat going back and forth about this as well right now, is that a big thing is that people are really scared of retail. I think that there's this big fear of retail that maybe even I don't know, maybe even the classic devs are kind of scared of retail.
I think
they don't want it to be retail so much that they won't even make changes that could be healthy for the game, right? There's a lot of things like right now chat's talking about dungeon finders and things where you can make changes to the game that are good for trying to improve the quality of life for the game without going full retail. Like, there's no reason we have to go full retail. We can make changes, and then people bring up that whole
retail.
They bring that whole slippery slope argument in, but like the fallacy of that whole argument is that you don't always go the entire way. You can have like minute changes or never. As chat saying, never go full retail. But
dual specs in TBC 2022. Like there are things that I think, like you said, exactly right, that they are afraid of like the retail backlash, because everyone has their own personal opinion of where in the WoW timeline things got fucked up and it's not as good of a game as it was before. Because it's been a long time, right? 15-year-old game. Where did it fuck up? What were the parts that went into it? Because everybody has a different experience. Everybody will say like, oh, WoD killed it, Mop killed it, Dungeon Finder killed it. Like, there is no like real evidence of these things actually killing it in the way that people think that they do, but it's more like personal experience. It's things in like pain points that people have had with the game, right? At different points. So because nobody knows exactly what has killed or hurt or harmed retail, they don't know what they should and shouldn't do, right? Because there are good changes like arena team shit, where you're just like, yeah, that definitely didn't kill retail, right? That definitely didn't kill retail, like getting rid of arena teams. Like, yeah, getting rid of batching, that didn't kill retail, right? Like, these types of things I feel like they were way too scared to make these changes that I think are just obvious improvements to the game and quality of life of it, because I don't like, is their target audience really like the WoW boomer? And they really want to just make sure that the WoW boomer enjoys the game?
It's really tricky because I feel like there's a very, very vocal minority in that aspect. Because look at the Season of Mastery, even Season of Mastery that they tried to do, and they brought that in, and they specifically had people campaign against the XP levels and say, no, you gotta, like, you shouldn't change the XP, the grinding and all of that in Classic is what makes it Classic, right? And then fast forward to now, and what they increased it to 100% or something. I can't remember what they did, but they've been increasing the XP rate of Season of Mastery more and more, when they realize like the people that actually want to do that stuff are not as many people as are vocally saying it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, the people who want to take a long time level and then stop. Like the people who are going to keep playing your game are the people who enjoy the end game, right?
Yeah.
Like those are the people who are going to keep playing your game. In my opinion, most MMOs are defined by having a good leveling experience, but an even better end game. The end game, in my opinion, is where most games for me, I will spend most of my time as an MMORPG. For games like, I'll just use Elden Ring as an example, right? Like a game that's story based, a game that's story driven. The story throughout it is what keeps you playing, and then when you get to the end game doesn't really fucking matter, right? It's just game's over, it's ended. But for MMORPGs, the end game is what keeps you in the gameplay loop of raid, get consumed so you can raid, so that you can beat things faster, so that you can then go back to getting consumed, etc., and just keep looping that, right? So the gameplay loop is supposed to keep you involved in it and the entire time afterwards. So leveling is not a gameplay loop, it is just something that you end up finishing at some point.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know Zirene doesn't like leveling, but I actually do like leveling, at least the first time around. I think the first time around, the community aspect.
Everybody likes it the first time around, and then afterwards, you're just like, "Get me out of this fucking thing! Get me in the slave pens!" Fall asleep, set an alarm for 15 minutes from now, wake up, walk out of slave pens, walk back in, go back to sleep for 15 minutes. Like that was me in the middle of the night when I'm leveling a character. Sorry, somebody else is leveling my character for me while I am walking back and forth into the dungeon. Like, I understand that people are like, what? You complain about the leveling experience when you're not even the one leveling your character like that. I'm like, yeah, because leveling experience sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's just so tricky because there's so much. I've always said this with every time I talk to my chat about it, is that there's so much nostalgia baked into how people want the game to be. Right. And the problem with designing the game for the nostalgia is that when they actually go play the game like that, they're like, oh yeah, this was fun. Okay, I'm done. I see you later. Like they don't actually stick around for the nostalgia. They just want to experience it once and then be done. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't work for a healthy game in the long run, because those people just don't. You can't build a game around people that want to play it for a short time and then quit, but then they'll look back at it happily and say, yeah, that was good, guys, that was good, but the game's dead now because none of us is still playing. Yep. And I think that's a big problem. So that was my top 5, because my top 5 was my number 1 was the world bus that we covered at the start. But I actually had some, like one of my runners up.
Let's get to runners up.
Yeah, my runner up was, I actually had community council in there. In that,
ooh,
I feel like community council was Blizzard's kind of last chance to make players think they can fix things, and then they just blew it. I think community council was where they lost the last of the people that believed that things could get better, and it just didn't, because there was such an opportunity for them to actually do something different, and it just turned out into be the exact same thing. I don't know anyone that even uses or reads community council regularly anymore. It's just become a wasteland of who's even. I don't even know who's on community council at this point, because they just effect no change onto the game, it seems. And outside of like once in a while, Six, who seems to be a hunter representative, is able to like bring some attention to a hunter issue here and there. I don't know anyone else or any other things that have been really affected by community council.
It kind of just, yeah, it was another one of those things where it was like coming off of Chronoboons, you're like, this is gonna be real nice, it's gonna be a real good idea, real good, just like phase 1 TBC. Big old flop. Yeah, my 2 runners up are the drum changes.
yeah, I felt that it would be somewhere on your list. Yeah.
I thought it was just so, because the drum changes, but it was drum changes, but also what they're indicative of. Because the drum changes are a problem, but the other problem with it was, why did you put tinnitus and the low range on the drums? Like, the whole reason they made the change to drums was so that people didn't feel as frustrated that they had to have leather working on every single person. And then they went and said, oh, it's an 8-yard range. And then everybody's like, this isn't even going to solve the problem. This is going to make more people take leatherworking. And then they're like, oh, you might be right. And then they were like, fuck it. let's give it tinnitus. So they gave it tinnitus, which is the actual fix that solves the problem after community feedback. And then they just cucked everybody with like low range drums. Like, why did you do both of those? Like, your initial fix was shit, and then there was a better fix that was suggested. You did it, and then dug your heels in, and said, we're still going to make this other change on top of it. And I'm just like, it just showed me that I don't like this goes back into my number one of, too averse to changing things in a 15-year-old game. It's still an issue of like, they just are really bad at making changes when they do make them. It's so sad. It's so sad. It just gave me another like taste of how out of touch they are. I know I don't like to like bash developers all the fucking time. I know they work really hard. It's just, I do wish that they understood a little bit more of what is causing the problem, that what is the fix they should implement to tackle the problem that they're actually saying is going to be a problem. Because no fucking way is 8-yard drums really going to solve that problem, right? It's just going to create more pain. Yeah. Like, I understand drums are like a really small thing, but like I said, it was the more that was indicative of a bigger thing.
Yeah. Like the entire thing about drums and them not wanting to just give us like the good change because they wanted. It feels like they always stuck on this trying to make like classic be like, oh yeah, this is the OG thing. We can't mess with the OG too much, and then they end up with just like this bastardized version that's not good. And a lot of times when they try to do that, or rather they. It seems like that's been their stance for changes recently, and they've even come out and said like, "Oh yeah, we gave you the classic experience, and then like 6 weeks later, you get the better experience, or whatever it is." And then it's almost to the point where you're like, "Well, why didn't you just give us the better experience from the start?" It's clear like the classic experience was not what people wanted at some point. But yeah, it's just.
And my last runner up, somebody actually mentioned it was botting.
Oh, I had that on my list as well as a runner-up.
Yeah, it was. Botting was a really weird one because it was I think like I never had an issue with the level boost or anything like that, but then the botting stuff was really shitty. Botting, it's weird because like maybe I just don't participate in like the open world as much anymore, but I don't see as many bots anymore as I did before. And I don't know if that's just because they gotten better at what they do or layers or whatever. But it's been a while since I've seen a bot because they keep doing those changes to like, Tempest Keep, you need flying, right? So you need to be max level for it. You can't just boom, boom, get in. Like there's things that like try and stop the bots slowly but surely from farming instances and all that. So
yeah, I had botting on that mostly because I feel like botting's a weird one because I feel in a lot of ways is one of the most vocal issues, while also being one of actually the least impactful outside of the fact that it kind of like inflates the economy and such. In that the average player experience doesn't necessarily feel worse because a rogue is farming in BRD, like botting or whatever. But I think the big problem with botting is that it shows a disregard for the players from their side of things when they could fix the botting issue. And like it just shows like their attitude towards the players, and people don't like to be in a way the players get disrespected by the fact that the botting issue can be fixed. It's not in a lot of ways, even if you went with the most dumb way to fix it, which is just hire 1 GM per server or something, and like every day he goes around and bans a bunch of bots. Like, it just in the player perception to make the players believe that you care about your game, I think is a big thing. Even if the botting on a whole, I don't think it actually leads to that many people quitting. I think the fact that the player perception that you don't care about your own game enough to do basic things, like get rid of these obvious, really, really obvious bots at the least, just shows like the players what you think about the game. And it makes them feel bad.
Guy flying around, teleporting, and dropping through the floor. Yeah, but the thing is that it was more egregious in my mind because, like now I say I haven't noticed it much. But like the biggest thing for me was back in fucking Classic. There's like Black Lotus insta teleporting fucking hunters who are like like eagle eyeing all over until they see a black lotus, and then they go pew, pew, and they just like teleport over to the black lotus and just loot it. I'm like, this is how is this not something that just gets immediately picked up by some fucking system of this guy is like constantly doing this, and then he teleports. Like, he's literally fucking teleporting.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw a Black Lotus thing, because for a little while I did the Black Lotus farm. I did the Black Lotus farm for some of my raiding gold, because there was a spot in was it Burning Steppes where you could be in range of like 4 different spawns or whatever, and I would go back and forth between a couple of them like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time I
down
was
south or whatever.
yeah. There was like 2 spots, and then I just. One time I remember running towards Lotus, and then this guy just appears in front of me. And I'm like, did he layer, or was he always here? I don't think he layered. I'm pretty sure this guy just ported in front of me, and there's nothing you can do about it. I just feel like attitude towards the player base is really important. In that, like, somewhere along the line for all of Classic, they lost a lot of the trust or like just the belief that the players feel towards the game, and it became. I think it's really bad when your game becomes a running joke in the player base. Because like every player base makes fun of the game in a lot of ways. Like League of Legends players love to rip on Riot for like the game. But then like if you actually look back at it, there was a recent podcast with Scara and Double Lift. The Offline TV did a podcast where they were just chatting about the good old days. And even them, like, even though they would rip on Riot all the time for changes, they'll still look back and be like, yeah, but compared to Blizzard or compared to these other games, like Riot is actually very proactive in trying to do stuff a lot of the times. And Blizzard has become like the opposite end of the spectrum, where everyone's like, yeah, at least we're not Blizzard. And on World of Warcraft, guys, we could be the guys in World of Warcraft. And I think that's a real pity. And that really ties back into like a lot of Zirene's #1 stuff, where just the entire approach to how they handle stuff is just wrong in a lot of ways. So that was my top 5. You got any more? You got any more runner-ups, Zirene?
Nope, that's it. Everything else perfect. No belts. No.
yeah, belts. Yeah.
No belts. That's it from me, man.
That was
ZA is nice. Everything they've done in like the last like week or two has been good. I got no complaints. I actually like ZA on a 3-day lockout.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Actually, nice. I mean, ZA is really fun in that it's like it doesn't feel like a chore right now. I don't know how I'll feel about this in like 2 weeks, maybe when I've done ZA 3 times a week for God knows how long, or 2 times a week. But we'll see. But right now, it's feeling kind of like a fun little adventure to do the occasional ZA.
I like it. 3-day lockout on all my characters keeps me entertained. Gets me to play the game and interact with it instead of raid logging.
It gets me badges, and it's like a really nice, easy gold farm as well in a lot of ways. In that, like, you get a little bit of gold, you get a little bit of badges, you get to spend time with like some guildies that you don't always talk to as well, because because a lot of times in 25-man raids, you don't actually talk to the people all the time. You guys are busy raiding.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I'm really enjoying ZA for now, at least. I don't know how I feel about it in a bit though, because I've already done ZA like 4 times on 1 dude. So if it keeps going on, maybe I'll get bored of it in another week or 2.
I like it though. It's nice.
So that was prepared. Again, please, if you want to help support the podcast and get Zirene some monies so that he actually gets paid to come on the podcast, use coupon code prepared at manscaped.com. Help
is
us.
Is that what this is? Is the feed Zirene by
Yeah. Dude, we're gonna guilt the audience. Zirene's not getting paid for this, guys. Help feed Zirene by shaving your balls. Shave your balls and help feed Zirene.
Technically true.
And help us secure that long-term prepared sponsorship. So yeah, thanks guys for hanging out. This was episode 40 of Prepared. We'll catch you next time. Oh, you didn't say goodbye, Zirene. Oh.
I won't say goodbye until they shave their balls.
Oh, okay.
I'm being held hostage.
Hashtag feed Zirene, guys. Hashtag feed Zirene.